If you want to start your own online tutoring business in 2025 and you don't have the right business model, it's going to limit the amount of impact you can have, the amount of income that you can make, and it also means you're going to pour your time down the drain. And believe it or not, teachers get this wrong pretty much every single time when they want to take their expertise online, and it costs them both time and money. Even seasoned online tutors who've been doing it for years get this wrong. So in this video, I'll show you the new business model for online tutors in 2025. Let's jump in. So what is the best model to tutor online in 2025? If you're a teacher who wants to take her expertise online or a tutor already tutoring online, don't miss this. I'll show you the old way of tutoring. Believe it or not, some teachers use this model to tutor online. It's like they're living in the dinosaur age. So we'll look at the old model of tutoring first, and then I'll show you the new model of tutoring that we've taught to over 3,000 teachers now here at the Teacher Project, and it helps them to have more time, more income, and more impact by helping and serving more students. So I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. I'm walking you through the old way of tutoring, showing you the new way of tutoring, and showing you exactly what you need as an online tutor in 2025 to scale your time down, your impact up, and your income up as well. So let's jump into the screen. So here's the old way of tutoring. Okay, so the old way of tutoring is to tutor students one-on-one, okay, online or in person. Okay, now that might seem like a good idea to get started, and it can work for some people to get started. However, it's a short-term solution, not a long-term solution, okay? And the reason why that is an issue is because there's going to be a limit on the amount of students that you can serve, because there's only so many hours in the day, right? And there's only so much money or fee that you're going to be able to charge each of your students. So you're capping everything. Your impact, you're going to be limited on the amount of time that you've got, and you're going to be limited on the amount of income that you can earn. Now, I was doing this back when I was a personal trainer after I left PE teaching, right? Back in 2015, I left teaching in a school and I went to become a personal trainer, right? And so the only thought process going in your mind when you're new to business is, hey, I want to take some clients on. So I fell into this exact same trap, right? I started taking on a one-on-one client, and then I started taking on another one-on-one client. And the thing was, all of the people I took on had different goals, different levels of fitness. And therefore, I was having to spend a lot of time having to prep, having to plan for all of these different clients. Okay, so not only was I teaching the one-on-one personal training sessions, of course, in the beginning, I took one person on, then I took another person on, and all of a sudden, I was capped out, right? And if I wanted to earn more money to support my wife in London and, be able to live a little bit, the only way that I could earn more money was to spend more hours personal training people. So I got to the point and I thought, do you know what? Like, yeah, I am earning a fair bit more than when I was a teacher, but I've still got no time, right? And so I tried to increase my rate. That worked a little bit. So I increased my rate and I was able to increase my income, of course. But again, I still didn't have any time, right? And plus, as I said, I was spending hours speaking to all of these different clients outside of the one-on-one sessions. So what teachers do is they have the moment that they can start tutoring and they tutor one-on-one online. And the reason why that happens is because we've all been conditioned that private tutoring means teaching one-on-one, okay? So everybody falls into the same trap. And that's because we just don't have a business head at that point in time, okay? So I shifted my personal training model by hiring a mentor and hiring a coach, right? Because I couldn't figure out alone. And I knew that all of the successful people out there, I was reading kind of what they'd done to grow their businesses. And they all talked about having these mentors and having these coaches and how just one golden nugget, was worth its weight in gold that they would pick up from these mentors and from these coaches. So I shifted my model to small groups when I was doing personal training. And then I was only working 3 hours a day. Okay, I had people with similar abilities inside of these group sessions. It was more fun. I had more time and my income like quadrupled, right? I was helping more people, or I actually had my life back. And so the old way, of course, is to tutor one-on-one. It's time to shift that, and we'll talk about what that looks like for tutors in a bit. And when you do teach one-on-one as well, obviously you're going to be charging by the hour, right? Because parents, students, they're going to be shopping around for an online tutor, and they're going to be looking and comparing what's the hourly fee for a tutoring session. So because you're selling your services by the hour, a price tag gets placed on that hour. And there's only going to be so much you can charge for that hour before it seems ridiculous and you're way ahead of the competition. And so therefore, it's going to be very, very difficult to sign new students up. Okay, and I've got a picture of a bike, a man riding a bike on this screen. If you stick with me, I'll tell you exactly what that means. Okay, so stick with me. Now, the other thing you have to do is deal with cancellations. Now, I might have spelt that wrong, but whatever. I know you being a teacher watching this, you're probably going to pick on me, but never mind. So dealing with cancellations, the thing is when someone's got a one-on-one session, the parent or the student feels that they're in control, right? So let me give you an example. If I've got a tutoring lesson for my daughter, which we do have, and it was a one-on-one session, well, then if I see that, hey, we're not going to make it to that session in a week's time, I'm going to send a message to the tutor, right? I'm going to say, hey, my daughter can't make it to the tutoring lesson on XYZ date. We will need to reschedule. And because you've taken on one-on-one students, obviously, you don't really have an option but to help that student reschedule, okay? And so therefore, you're having to deal with cancellations, which means you have an unpredictable business, right? Whereas if you think about it, I send my daughter also to extracurricular clubs at school, okay? Now, one of the clubs she attends is basketball, right? Now, if she can't make it and we pay for the term, like in one go, right? And it's probably very common in schools. You know, they have these extracurricular clubs, you pay up front for the term. Now, if, for example, 1 week, and these are obviously with like a group of students sign up, there's a group of them there from different age ranges or whatever, right? Now, if my daughter's sick 1 week, or if she can't make it 1 week, I'm not going to tell the basketball coach, oh, can we reschedule that lesson? Of course I'm not. I don't have the option because I signed up at the beginning of the term and it was a group session, and therefore I'm not in control. I don't have the flexibility to reschedule that lesson. Who does have the flexibility? The coach, right? Because of the model that they're using, okay? As I said, there's way more prep work. I shared with you exactly what happened when I was a personal trainer and I was doing one-on-one sessions after I left teaching. I had all of these different clients and they all needed different advice and coaching from me. They needed different nutrition plans. And therefore, I was doing a ton of prep work away from the sessions to deal with all of these people as well. Okay, whereas same for you as a teacher, if you take on students one-on-one, obviously to make a business out of it and bring in enough income, if your goal is to do this full time, then you have to take on as many students. You just end up taking on a student because you need to fill your schedule. And therefore you might take on a student who's this age, this ability, that ability, so on, right? And therefore, each student is going to need different types of mentoring and coaching and teaching from you and advice, different sets of homework, different prep for the lesson. You're having to prep a million different lessons, right? And so therefore, way more prep work in this old way of teaching. But believe it or not, people are still doing it because they don't know any better. And you're going to know better as we go through the end of this video. Okay, and then of course, we've already been for this. You are capped on the amount of impact that you can have, because if I fill my teaching schedule, let's say that I do 5 hours, right, of teaching in the evening after school, if I was just getting started as a teacher, and that would be a lot, right? Imagine finishing your classroom job and then going doing 5 hours of teaching back to back. Imagine even just being a full-time tutor and having to go back to back to back to back to back for 5 hours. You're going to be exhausted. Your evening is out the window, okay? And let's say I do that 4 days a week, 20 hours. Well, now I've got all the prep time alongside of it. The only way for me to grow in terms of income and impact at this point, impact meaning helping more students, right? And income meaning I can earn more, is I could increase my rate. I might lose a few students. And as I said, eventually you're going to be way outpricing the competition. So it's going to be really difficult to make the sale. Okay, I'm going to eat into my weekends if I want to do more. So you're completely capped. So what you've got here on the screen is this guy riding a bike. Okay, so this old way of tutoring one-on-one, this broken model, a model from the dinosaur age that needs to change, is like riding a bike. When you're riding a bike, you are capped on the distance that you can go because it requires effort from you. It's dependent upon your stamina, how hard you pedal, and eventually you're going to get exhausted. So there's only so far that you can go. Right? And it doesn't matter if you're a professional biker. There's going to be a limit on the speed which you can go, the endurance you've got, the distance you can go. So you are completely capped, right? It's manual work. You are having to put in the effort. So you need to switch it, and you need to have the new model of tutoring, which is like driving a car. So if you think about driving a car, really there's no limit on where you can go to. Right? You can go as far as you want in a car. You can just fill up with gas or petrol, and then you can keep going again. Okay, the car doesn't get exhausted unless you've got a broken old banger, right? But you can take people with you. It's not just you alone. The bike is you on your own. This is the old way of tutoring. The car, you can take people with you. And if you want to get a bigger car, well then you can take more people. If you want to take even more people than that, you can get a minibus, you can get a double-decker bus, right? So you can always continue to grow your business, and that resembles the group model of teaching, which we'll look at in a second. And so that is the new way of teaching. The new way is to tutor students in groups, okay? But not only that, there's a certain model to it. We talked about a second ago about how when you teach the old way one-on-one online, you are stuck by how much you can charge, right? There's a limit to how much you can charge, and therefore you have an unpredictable business because you're going to pick up cancellations, reschedules, all of that. So you've got absolutely zero idea of what you're going to bring in each month or each week, okay? So you just have unpredictability in your business. Pretty scary. Whereas when you teach groups, I compared it to the model of my daughter's basketball club at school. What happens to these extracurricular clubs at school? Well, they charge for the term up front. And therefore, the business, whoever's coming into the school to run that extracurricular club, they have predictability. They know how much that class at that particular school is bringing in. And if there was demand for it and they were to advertise it better, I'm sure they could create more demand and open up another group class, charge for the term. So the key behind the model of tutoring is to charge over a term or a semester, or, at the bare minimum, like 8 weeks. Okay, so we've found what works for Teachers Best that we've worked with is somewhere between 8 to 16 weeks, 12 generally being the sweet spot. Okay, and this benefits you because there's no cancellations. The parent can't ring up and say, or send you a message and say, little Johnny's not going to be here next week. Can we reschedule that lesson? Because that's the time when the group session is. Right? So you don't have to spend more time trying to help that person. Okay? Try and fit into your already busy schedule. All right? So it gives you more predictability. You don't have to deal with cancellations. You're also able to give more support in less time. And because in order for you to group the students, what would need to happen? Well, you would need to have students that were a similar age, a similar ability, studying the same subject. So there's only one lesson to prep for that particular group of students. Okay, and therefore all at a similar point, you can set the same homework, you can give feedback in a group, okay? And so you can actually provide more support in less time. And because you're not going to be trapped teaching multiple hours back to back just to make this work and scale your impact and income, you're going to have more time to actually focus on the business and serve your students. Or you can bring in more money because you can scale your business by helping more students in groups and by earning more per hour that you actually teach. And plus, you're not even earning per hour anymore. You're selling over a block period, right? So you have way more predictability, you have more cash flow into the business. So you don't even need to do the prep. As you grow this, you can have teaching assistants and you can hire teachers and learning support assistants, whatever, to help you with all of that. And they can mark the homework. Obviously, in the beginning, it's something that you're going to need to do because you got to validate before you automate, right? And so before you delegate stuff, you need to do it yourself first so that you can actually teach, lead the people who are going to do it for you. Okay. And most people are just unwilling to do this and get their hands dirty and they don't want to work hard. Okay. And that's why most people fail. So you have to do this first yourself. and then you can teach other teachers as you grow to teach your lessons for you. And this is actually one of the other mistakes that we see teachers make, is they fail to take themselves out of the teaching because they stay stuck with the teacher hat on instead of the business owner. So at some point, you do need to remove yourself from the teaching to be able to focus on things like the marketing, making sure the students are getting great results, to oversee everything, to work on student enrollment process, all of that, right? Product design, making sure your curriculums, your course material is great. Okay. Now, of course, at this point, you have unlimited impact and income for the reasons that I just said, because you could teach, let's say you teach 5 students in a group, and I decide to teach students on a Monday. I have my first group slot to fill, Monday, 6 till 7 p.m., 5 students. Then I might just decide to teach a second hour, 6 till 7 p.m. Then I might have another group on a Tuesday, similar sort of times. And so over the course of those 4 hours of teaching, I could potentially see 20 students. Now that would probably be minimum. That would be a good start point. You could double your group size as you get more confident. Okay. And you could be working with 20 students, 40. Okay. Depending on the subject. Now this does depend on the subject that you teach. There is going to be a limit on the group size that you can teach based on like the age of the student, perhaps even like the learning difficulties and stuff like that. So that is something to consider. A model that does workload is, even if you do have younger students or special educational needs, for example, that you're teaching that particular demographic, then you can also bring in learning assistants, and you can probably charge more anyway to help with that. So you could increase the student numbers if you wanted to. But as I said, at this point, there's no limit, because now you can hire another teacher and they can duplicate it for you. Okay. And you might be thinking, well, why can't I do that with one-on-one? Okay. But let's face it, in a one-on-one schedule, you're going to be working with 20 students probably across the week, and then you're going to be burnt out. Plus, you're going to have a limit on the income that you're bringing in. So you're not even going to have the margins to hire another tutor. Plus, because you're fully booked out, you're not going to have the time to go and focus on marketing, speaking to new students, to bring them in. So you're basically stuck. This way, the old way, you are creating a glorified job. This way, the new way to tutor online, the new model, you're creating a business that can scale. And that's the key here, okay? So you've got to build a car. So think of it like a car somewhere that isn't limited by you, your effort, your time. Again, it's not you pedaling solo on this bike. You need a car where you can take people with you, that you can put your foot down and you can accelerate and you can choose how fast you can go, okay? Without using your own energy. Guys, quick interrupt. I hope you're enjoying the video, but I wanted to make sure you picked up your copy of Teaching on Your Own Terms. It's my best-selling book, and it shares with you the exact 5 steps that I've used with over 2,000 teachers at this point, helping them build their dream online teaching businesses. It went to bestseller in 7 categories. It's been featured by NASDAQ in Times Square, New York City. And I know you're going to love it. Inside of the book, you're going to learn things like how to position yourself as the go-to tutor in the marketplace, and the offer that you can create to get your ideal students reaching out, and how to communicate that. I'll share with you what I've seen as the best advertising strategies to get in front of new students and parents who want what you've got, how to sell your services, and everything you actually need to include in an online group tutoring business to make sure your students crush it and get great results. There's some free gifts and bonuses in there. I think in the first couple of pages, there's a link. You can go and grab some free gifts on me, but I know you're going to love it. Teaching on Your Own Terms. I'll leave a link down below in the comments, and go and pick up your copy today. All right, so let's look at the breakdown of this new model then. So there's a few things I'm going to cover with you. What should you include in this new model? Now, I hope that it's pretty clear why this is the model that you should be using if you're a teacher that wants to create impact and, of course, get paid what you deserve, okay, at the same time. So 3 things that we'll cover. We'll go through program length, we'll go through program deliverables, and then the income and impact potential. I'll show you how you can map out your pricing. If you've seen some of my other videos, I do go into that in more depth. But here we'll just scratch the surface, and the main thing I'm going to pay attention to is what's actually included in your group model. Now, we kind of call this a hybrid group model. I'll explain why as we go through, okay? So first thing is program length, all right? So program length, I've already spoke to you about this. Initial 12-week commitment, okay, would be great. Depends on your subject, depends on your semester time, whatever. I wouldn't go any lower than 8, potentially some semesters based on where you're on, maybe even 16 weeks. And it kind of matches the academic year. right? And they're broken into semesters and school terms. Now, you don't have to think like that. So you don't have to think, okay, I've got to match it up with the school term, because then you're stuck in like this model where you can only take students on at the start of the school term. Well, then if you haven't filled your classes, you're stuck, right? And so it's just to continue. Whenever you speak to a new student, their start date is the day they sign up. Their end date is 12 weeks down the line. Studies show, of course, at 90 days, which is about 12 weeks. 90 days is a little bit longer than 12 weeks, but give or take, studies just continuously show that people can commit to 12 weeks. People can commit to their goals for 90 days. It's also like saying, hey, let's date before we get married. I'm not going to go into a bar and say to somebody, hey, will you marry me? If I liked someone, now I wouldn't do this because I'm married with 3 kids, but if I was a single guy, I wouldn't go into the bar and say, hey, will you marry me? The first time I met someone, I'd speak to them and ask them out on a date, right? And so you've got to see your business like this as well. So I go with an initial 12-week commitment, and then I would move into a continuation model. Okay, I shouldn't have an S on that. It just should say continuation. So I'd move into a continuation model. And what that means is, when I first enroll the student at the first time of speaking to them, I don't want to have to recheck in with them every 12 weeks, right? So, hey, are you continuing? You would just have some sort of thing in your agreement where it says, hey, after the first, it's an initial 12-week commitment so that we can see great results, we can work together, and we've got some commitment. Here's the investment for 12 weeks. Then from there, after that, it moves on to a rolling 30-day monthly fee priced at XYZ unless you give a 30-day cancellation notice. Okay, and so that's how you would then just roll the students over. There is another way you could do this. I just gave you the example of dating before you get married, right? So what you could do, if you have 12 weeks speaking to a student, at that point, at the end of the 12 weeks, you could extend for another 12 weeks and you would get more cash flow straight in the door if you did that model. Okay, so that could work as well. Or at that point, that date marry scenario, well, now you could lock in perhaps an entire 12-month period with the student. So that's something to think about as well. Okay, but definitely go for initial 12 weeks when you're launching your classes. The students don't all have to have the same 12-week start date. They're just on a rolling 12-week fee, 12-week program or sign-up period whenever they sign up. Okay, and it ends whenever they sign up. And then I think the easiest one is just move them on to a continuation. You just got to make sure that you make sure that's stated clearly at the time of enrollment. Okay. Or if you've got something you can offer further, you can lock in a longer term agreement, and that's that, hey, let's get married now. Right. The next thing is the program deliverables. Now, you wouldn't have all of these in the beginning. This will depend on your start point, because if you're already tutoring online, there'll be some deliverables here that we'll talk about that you can probably add in now. Okay, based on the students that you've got. If you're starting from scratch, I'll let you know as well what you should have. So 1 to 2 online group classes a week. Okay, now I think this also depends for me on the age of student, okay, and also the price point probably as well that you're offering to your students. So if I think about my kids, right, I've got a 7, 4, 3-year-old. So if I was to think about, people might not even be able to fit 2 classes into their week, like with some parents. I know it'd be very difficult for my daughter to fit in 2 classes into her tutoring sessions that she has after school because we have other commitments on, right? So sometimes one actually just fits better into your families that you're working with, into their lives, okay? We have had 2 before with my daughter, and it was kind of a stretch for her. And this was when she was a little bit younger, it was probably a little bit tiring as well. So it does kind of depend on the student age. And so I actually think these days, 1 is a great start point, okay? Then 2 probably depend upon the age and the price point that you're offering as well. Because also the way that you could communicate this to the parents, if you're getting objections and things like that when you go to present this to them and they're saying, hey, 2's a lot. Well, let me ask you, Mrs. Smith, what do the kids normally do after school? They get home and they stick the TV on and they have some dinner and then they do a little bit of homework. Got it. So, do you think it'd be better if they were to watch TV for an hour, okay? Or if we could continue to stimulate their brains, okay, and give them some additional learning? What do you think would benefit them more long term? Well, of course, they learn. Got it. So this is exactly why we, teach our students 2 times a week, because if we can get in front of them more, we can help little Jimmy more. Right? So he's going to get much faster, much better results. And therefore, we're going to see a massive boost in his grades much quicker, probably in half the time it would take him at school. Would that be good if Jimmy was able to? Yeah, I'd love it. Cool. So can you see why we offer two classes a week? Absolutely. It makes complete sense now. So you've got to educate, obviously, the parents. And that was me just giving an example. If I was on a potential sales call with a parent or student, right? So just think about that. So 1 to 2 online group classes a week. Now, 1 weekly onboarding call. What this call is, so I gave you the model that you just want it so you can, it doesn't matter what day of the year it is, what point in the school term, you can just enroll new students consistently to fill your group classes up. Well, how you go about that? Because you might be thinking, oh, well, this student's got, he's going to have to catch up or she's going to have to catch up. And that's just such a, like we see teachers get stuck in their head about this. Well, the way to get around it is you run a weekly onboarding call. So all of the new students that sign up with you in a particular week have a set date and time where every single week you jump on with these parents and students and you educate them on how the program works. Make sure they've got any questions. Make sure they know how to attend lessons. You could even have like a start assessment that you could build into this onboarding process, an onboarding call, so you could examine where the students were at. So you've got a baseline, okay? Obviously, that's important. As a teacher, you want to measure where the students started. So you have an onboarding call to educate all of your new signups each week, okay? And then based on that, as your classes grow, you'll probably find that you've got a class who's performing at this level, performing at that level, and so on, slightly different age groups or whatever. If you're teaching like math, maybe you've got 9th grade and 10th grade. Or if you're in the UK, maybe you've got year 1 and year 2 students doing reading. Okay, well, not to say that the year 1 student can't go with the year 2 students, right? They might actually be performing on that level. So in the onboarding process, you can assess that, okay? And you could have some form of assessment. And the call just helps them feel less stressed. It helps them build the car, right? So going back to my car photo, imagine you want all of your students lining up with cars to race. Well, in the beginning, they don't have a car because they don't know, they can't race, right? Because they don't know how everything works. They don't know how to attend lessons. They don't know what's expected of them. They don't know where they're starting from. They don't know any of this. So you've got to build an onboarding process to help them build a car to race with the other students that are already in the classes. So recommend a weekly onboarding call. A big thing when you're running this model is also a parent or student community. I say or student because it does depend on the age group. If you've got like university students or adult learners or just older age students, having some form of community for them. You can do this in WhatsApp, in Telegram, could be a Facebook chat or whatever. Or there are sort of these learning hubs these days that you can find online that come with their own communities, right? And this is really key because with the old model, the parent and the student is focused on what? Just they're taking the investment and the rate that they're paying for the tutoring lessons and they're attaching that value to whatever goes on inside of the one-on-one lesson. Well, with the new model, you're able to build other things around the group classes so that the parent and the student, they don't just think, I'm paying this much for the 12 weeks and, all I get is the lessons. Actually, they get this community where you can be in there as a teacher educating them. I know that, for example, my son, he has his teachers at school use this app called Class Dojo, right? And they're able to drop homework in there. They're able to share stuff, make announcements. And they've created this community feel. And it's pretty cool. And we've been teaching that to the teachers that we work with for years, right? And so when his teachers told me they were going to do this, I was like, that's brilliant. Like we do this with the teachers that we work with online. Can't believe I've never seen any of my daughter's teachers use the same model. And she's been at school, for like the last 4 years now. She's in her 4th year of school. But my son's teachers did it first time. Brilliant. Because now, as the teacher, you're able to be seen as more than just the teacher to the students. Okay. So you can have challenges, you can have prizes, and people will want to stay for the community. Okay. So really key form of support channel, really important. This is a pretty easy one. But obviously, the parents and students who invest into your tutoring, they need a way to get hold of you. But it's very important. The reason why I've put this here is very, very important you get this right from the beginning. Otherwise, they're going to be messaging you at the weekend, unsociable hours, and you're going to be dealing with all sorts of stuff. So it's very important when you start it, you can do this in your onboarding call. Here's how you get support. You could create some sort of form and a link that they can submit, which you could potentially host in the community, or it can just be going out as like the material, the resources you give the parents on the onboarding call or students. And so you make it very clear what the way is to get to support, how to contact you. And I would just create like either like an email support or a ticket system, like create some sort of online form. A Google form would be very easy, it's free. Okay. And then you get back to people within a certain amount of time, and you can explain this is so that we can track everything, doesn't get lost, and so that we can make sure that you know when we're going to be supporting you. And so you would state the hours of support as well. So just make sure you get that right. The other thing, now the last three things, they're things that you would add in down the line. Okay. So if you're just starting out, this is all you would really need. And from there upwards, think about the program length, or student sign up length, all the way down to support channel. Don't do any more than that in the beginning. If you're already tutoring online, or once you reach a certain threshold of students, now I'm going to give you example thresholds. It's not to say that that's when you absolutely must do it. You've got to take into consideration, like when you feel like student results are potentially going to suffer, you need to add some sort of additional support in to make sure it doesn't happen, because it's very important. Okay, so what we found works really well is like a weekly homework club or a catch-up class. Okay, think about it like office hours. I know that's very popular in the United States. You could have like office hours where you're just available for that hour, and I would structure it differently in your model based on who you're tutoring. So what we'll teach the kind of younger teachers working with younger kids is you might just call it a book club, for example, where, hey, it's like an extra 30 minutes in the week and you just read a book with them and you practice. And it could simply just be practicing what you learn in the lesson that week. So it's just an additional class to get in front of the kids and nurture them, right? Whereas older students, you could have it as homework club or exam revision, and you could theme it. And so it's more like a drop-in class where they don't have to be there, but you are open for questions with the older students at that particular point in time. And based on your student numbers, maybe you put multiple of these on. You could even, as you grow your team and you hire tutors, have a few of you in there, right? So this, or it could be strategic. If you're finding students are falling behind, what you can do is you can say to the parents, hey, I recommend Jimmy comes to the catch-up class this week. It's on XYZ date and time. Can he make it? And it's a value add. And so you can do it invite only if you want. So I would add that in about 15 to 20 students, right? Again, give or take, you got to make a decision on your own threshold. Normally when you feel like there might be a few students falling behind, and instead of offering a time one-on-one, you put in a catch-up class or a homework club, and you'll find that will, or office hours, Q&A, whatever you want to do, book club, you can theme it, drawing class or whatever, okay? The next thing is the one-on-one student check-ins. So as you do scale your student numbers, okay, you definitely don't need to do it in the beginning, but once you're at 50 students plus, think of it like a parents' evening. Now, you could add this in at any point anyway, right? But so at 50 plus students, you're probably going to need some form of parents' evening, right? Where you let them know how they're getting on, you provide feedback or whatever, okay? So the way to think about this is to look at strategic points in the student journey. So if we take that initial 12-week commitment, well, in the beginning, you might have a one-on-one, and it might need to be you in the beginning as you map this out and you make sure that you dial in how you want these kind of one-on-one sessions to go. The first one could be a one-on-one session where you simply do a test and review so that you can place the students in your groups, or even just examine where they're at and create that baseline of their skills and their grades, right? And then if you think about a 12-week period, as I was just saying, well, if we just let the student go all the way through at 12 weeks, then, maybe they lose momentum, maybe they lose motivation, which could also impact things like retention for you and their results, right? And so what you might do is you might look at the point, where do the students normally have that kind of drop in motivation or a dip in attendance, that type of thing as you get going. And this is why I say you're going to need to do this in your own tutoring business as you get going. But let's just say, cool, let's have it in the middle. At 6 weeks, we have a check-in. I feed back to you. It's a great point to help build momentum for the following 6 weeks. Okay, so a strategically placed one-on-one review session. And then I would only do the third one in that same time period if you were going to agree on a longer period of time. Okay, so they got to the end of the 12 weeks and you wanted to make sure that at that point you could suggest to the student, hey, well, let's commit now for the rest of the academic year. Okay, so if you're doing that, that would definitely warrant another call with them. Okay, or you could just pick a time frame every 6 weeks or so on like that. Okay, and eventually you get a teacher to do this. And in long term, this 100% is not worth doing in the beginning. Do not fall into this trap. Housing developers or real estate developers, property developers, they do not build the houses first and then go and sell them. It's madness. They sell the house, create the vision, and then get to work and build, right? And so many teachers go into the analysis paralysis mindset, thinking, oh, I need to create all of these resources and build out some sort of classroom and learning portal to make it look great. You haven't got any students yet, so why are you even thinking like that? And again, this is just because you're thinking with your teaching head and not your business head, okay? So the real estate developer, they don't do that. They sell the houses first, and then they get to work and they build when there's enough demand. Right? So the student learning portal could simply be like some sort of course that you could create, a learning hub online where you could start to upload even lesson replays, so students can catch up, where you can upload homework and things like that, things for the students to do and follow away from their lessons. Right? So in the UK, we have something called BBC Bite Size, that type of stuff. So basically some sort of online course that you can attach on that you can refer the students to. But you just build this as you go, and it's something you can implement over time. And now if you look at this value proposition, I'm going to say to the parent and the student, hey, well, we're going to work together over 12 weeks. Here's everything you get. Look at everything I've listed off. Way more valuable than the boring one-on-one model, right? So now this comes on to impact and income potential down the bottom, and I'm going to show you what you can charge. Now, what you can charge, of course, depends on things like your skill level, your sales skills, the amount of student testimonials and results that you've got, and potentially even the age of student that you're serving, okay? So I'm just going to talk through where I would start. Doesn't mean that that's what you should charge. I'm just going to suggest where we explain to teachers they should start if they've got zero experience. We have teachers selling tutoring for 12 weeks, $1,000 or £1,000, at $2,000 or £2,000, $2,500, $3,000 and more, right? But obviously they've got experience at this and they're skilled. And so you do need to get to that level. So let's say you're starting out. Well, let's say that you charge $500. So I speak to Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith comes along, present all of this to her. Here's how it runs. So it's only $500 for the next 12 weeks. What? That's so cheap for all of that, right? And now let's say I have 5 students in a class. Well, and I have one class, actual group class a week. There's 12 sessions. So if we were to break it down per class, and because parents and students are going to do that in their head, well, what does that work out to per class? But because you've got everything else, it does take the light and the focus off just the class, right? They're not just attaching the value to just the one session. So, but it actually works out to $41.66 per class. Let's just call it 40 for ease of maths. In this. So if I've got 5 students in that group, 5 times 40, obviously $200 per class, okay, or pounds. Now, if I have 10 groups a week, so that would be me teaching just 10 hours, and I would cap it there. I don't really, as a teacher, trying to run and build an online tutoring business, I don't want to be teaching more than 10 hours because then I can't market, I can't sell, I can't develop my programs, I can't speak to new students, all of that. So 10 is kind of the cap, okay, before you want to hire other teachers. The issue is, if you don't run this model, you don't have the margins you don't charge enough, you're not able to hire other teachers, right? Because you can't afford it. And so that's why you need to do this. And so then 10 groups, that's $2,000 a week, $8,000 a month, way more than the average teaching salary, right? If I'm teaching, if I fill all the groups, I've got 50 students in those groups, 5 times 10, 50. Now I've got a few ways that I can increase my income and impact. Let's say that I double the students per class, right? And I have 10 in a class. Again, depends on age range, subject, things like that. But let's say I do double it. Well, that takes me to $16,000 a month, providing I fill my classes. I've doubled my student numbers to 100. Okay, let's just say I increase the rate, keep the same amount of students there, but now I'm charging $1,000. Again, business doubles. Okay, and over time, you might even increase your rate even more. But an easy way at that point is to slowly, if you want to build a business that has unlimited impact and income, Just like any business would do, you need to hire staff members to help you grow it. Otherwise, you're stuck with a job, okay? So now I hire 2 other teachers. I fill their classes as well. We still keep 5 in a group. And now I've tripled the business, 24 grand a month, right? And so this is what the teachers that we work with are doing. This is the model that they are using because it is an actual business model, not creating a job as an online tutor, okay? So if that was useful, here's what I recommend. I've got a book. I'm going to go and grab it. So stick with me. Here it is. It's called Teaching on Your Own Terms. It went to bestseller in 7 categories when I launched it. It's been featured by NASDAQ in Times Square, New York City. I've been on TV appearances with it. It really does break down the 5 steps to launch and build your dream online teaching business. Because here I've showed you the model, but what about the ways to even get the students and fill the classes? Well, I talk about inside the book, and it's only a few dollars. Okay, so go and grab a copy. There's a free course inside of it as well. I'll leave a link in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, you took some value from it, hit subscribe or hit like, leave a comment wherever you're watching it. See you soon.